Chapter 16, The Lord's Host. A few thoughts on Christian position, conflict, hope. By F.G. Patterson. Condition of soul, the shield of faith. We have examined the subjective or inward state of soul, personally and relatively, in the previous parts of this armor of God. Now we come to that inward state which rests in unfeigned faith upon God Himself in His known character, what He is, which sustains in us perfect confidence in Him, so that come what will, we know that nothing can separate us from His love. Things may seem adverse, we may have reached our wits' end, so to speak, still the heart that knows Him who cannot be but what He is, waits patiently for His time to show Himself strong in behalf of them that trust Him. Above all, this previous condition of soul, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. 1. What is here spoken of is not the faith of the sinner which first lays hold on Christ. We find that in the Epistle to the Romans, and we may term it the no-working faith of a sinner, to him that worketh not, but believeth on Him that justifieth the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Romans 4 verse 5. Here in Ephesians, we find the faith of the saint, the perfection of confidence in God, known experimentally as one who is what He says he is. That confidence which as the heart grows in the deeper knowledge of Him, discovers more deeply the springs of evil within, yet finds its confidence in Him growing in proportion, so that the heart trusts and counts upon Him against itself. It can say, I cannot trust myself, and God cannot trust me, but I can count on Him and trust Him. It can say, Go with me, for I am stiff-necked, and cannot but fail if left alone. You find this shield of faith practically illustrated in Moses. God had said that the people were a stiff-necked people, and if He were to come into their midst He must consume them in a moment. Then Moses took the tent and pitched it outside the camp, and the Lord came down and spake with Moses face to face, as a man speaks with his friend. Moses had found grace in the sight of the Lord, and his heart seeks to find grace, he seeks to learn the fullness of this grace. All the goodness of the Lord then passed before him, and his heart, bowed in the presence of the mercy of the Lord, makes the very fact of their being a stiff-necked people, the plea that His presence might go with them by the way. The very reason which the Lord gave in Exodus 33 verse 5, for not coming into their midst, lest He should consume them in a moment, Moses pleads in Exodus 34 verse 9. As the reason why He should go with them. And He said, If now I have found grace in Thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray Thee, go among us. For it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for Thine inheritance. But he had found out meanwhile what God is in himself, and in this consciousness he pleads for His presence, on the ground of what He is, and seeks His company by the way, because they were a stiff-necked people. Oh, what confidence, what a plea to present to Him, in the consciousness of the depths of such evil hearts. And it must be so, the more He is known, and the more we know ourselves. See this confidence even before forgiveness is known, in the woman of the city who was a sinner. The very light which rendered her speechless, as a convicted sinner in His presence, drew her heart to the One who, while He searched the conscience, piercing and following in its turnings all the depths of sin and a nature at enmity with God, drew the heart to Him in love, so that she can count on Him, because of what He is, against all that His holiness had disclosed of her heart. In her case it was a sinner's confidence who had not yet been assured of His grace. How much greater must our confidence be in One whose grace is known, and who has set us without a spot in the presence of His holiness, where the very light and holiness only increase the confidence of our hearts the more. Satan may come in with his dark suggestions, but their power is gone, because God is known. Thank God, we do know Him better than we know ourselves. Not better than He knows us, but better than we know our own hearts. What a comfort to the heart, that He knew all, that He knows all. I can go to Him and tell Him all. The depths of evil, and the springs and motives which I find there, and find that I have Him for me, against it all. Satan's fiery darts, I do not now wish to enter upon their full meaning, as used of God for discipline of the soul under His hand, are quenched with the joyous and exulting note, God is for me. Silenced by this blessed condition of soul conveyed to us figuratively in this shield of faith. How much better is it to possess this blessed state of soul, by having on the armor at all times, than to find its importance when wounded by some shaft of Satan. It is not the day of conflict which is the time to put it on, but when the heart is with God, in the consciousness of His favor resting upon it. At the same time the deep consciousness that a watchful enemy is ever ready to take advantage of an unguarded moment, should such be allowed, and work defeat or wound the soldier of Christ. Its deep importance is learned at times by failures and woundings of the soul. How much better, I repeat, it is to learn it in confiding peace with God. To use it in companionship with Him, rather than by exposing oneself, with some portion of it wanting, to the assaults of Satan's power. Negatively we may learn its importance by slothfulness of soul with God, the heart thus becomes indifferent and cold. Positively we may learn it when the conscience is concerned and not at rest. Then the Spirit of God acts as the stern, unbending convictor of the conscience, making us feel the loss of that joy, and happy communion with our God and Father, as known and enjoyed against the evil, by His pointing out the evil which has thus separated practically the soul from God. How frequently we find the former, or negative side. The latter, or positive side, is more terrible to bear, because the soul has enjoyed the favor of God which is better than life, and has lost it through allowed evil. I speak, of course, of one whose acceptance as a sinner is complete, and who has known it in the soul's consciousness. Thus this complete, perfect confidence in God, expressed in the shield of faith, follows all the previous inward condition of the soul conveyed to us in the loins girded with the truth, the breastplate of righteousness, and the feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace.